This is the third in a series of films I'm making, which is comparing synthetic paintbrushes. I normally use Winsor and Newton Series 7, but this is a sable brush, and as a committed vegetarian, I'm looking for an alternative. I've made two other films, during which my favourites have come out as the Rosemary and Company Spotter Red Dot and the Princeton Neptune. But today I'm comparing 4 new ones. So we have another Princeton one. This is a Princeton Neptune round. I couldn't get a number 1, which I normally would. It's a number 2. A Jackson's S777 Quill, a 10/0, which was recommended to me by a viewer. An Escoda Versatile, a number 1. And a Vinci Colinio, a number 1. So I'll be testing all of these in turn and giving feedback as I go along. Hopefully we'll find something which provides a good alternative to my Winsor and Newton sable. Let's get going. I've drawn up this forget-me-not, which is what I'm going to be doing my test on. The reason I've chosen it is just because it's in flower in the garden, and also it's got very simple leaves. So here's my sketch, and first up is the Princeton Neptune round. So let's see, totally fresh. Take it off. Let's have a look at that nib. Let's zoom in, shall we? The tip looks pretty sharp, actually. Although actually, even looking at it now, I see a slight raggedness on the left-hand side. But let's give it a good chance. So I know most people don't do this, but I mix up my paints with the same brush I paint with. It does mean that I get through my paintbrushes really quickly, but when I'm working to deadline, I simply don't have time to keep switching between paintbrushes. Or maybe I'm just lazy. Anyway, so these brushes, I'm going to paint some of the leaves with it, and I'm going to mix colours with it, and I'm going to keep track of how I feel about the brush as I use it. So this one is the Princeton Neptune round. The colour I've mixed is a very yellowish green, because that's the colour of the leaves of the forget-me-not. And it's made from, oh crikey, oh, that's all very zipped in, sorry. It's made from sap green, cadmium yellow, touch of yellow ochre, and a touch of cobalt blue. So as you can see, the brush is still holding its tip even though I'm mixing with it. It's looking quite good. So I'm going to start on this far leaf and see how I feel. Okay, make sure it's under the spotlight. I'm looking at my reference at the plant. Oh, that's a nice thin point. Look at that. That line is very controlled. Whoops. That feels nice. The paper that I'm working on is Stonehenge Aqua hot press. For a long time I swore by Fluid 100 made by Global Arts, but then I got a big pad and something was wrong with it. Every single sheet was sort of compromised, as if the sizing was wrong. So I've reverted to my other favourite for a while, which is this one, which is so I've reverted to my other one for a while. Which is Stonehenge Aqua hot press. Right, this is feeling nice to me. There's some very ghost-like spots on these leaves. I was thinking of putting in all the drops, all the dewdrops that are sitting on them, because it's early morning here. But actually, because my studio is a little bit warmer than the outside, I'd like to point out it's not very much warmer. Goodness me, no. But it's a little bit warmer, so there's a certain amount of them disappearing. So I'm not going to rely on putting them in because they'll go. This is holding edges very nicely. You see? So I'm just building up here using these little brush strokes I always use. It's carrying enough paint at one time, and the point is very nice. So I'm enjoying this so far. So far, so good. Look at that line. That's crisp. Slightly broken. But it's doing what I need it to do. And when I press harder, it's delivering more paint, which is what we need. As with all things, with my test of these brushes, a lot of it's very personal. So I find a brush I like. It may be one that other people detest, and vice versa. All these ones that I'm testing today have come from recommendations from people who've watched my other YouTube videos about trying to find a good synthetic alternative to my Winsor and Newton Series 7. So I need to give a big thank you to each and every one of you who've taken the time to leave a comment and suggest alternatives. Yeah, okay. So this is not bad at all so far. So good. The thing with synthetics you have to look out for quite often is, let's paint around that dewdrop, I'm keeping that one, is their tips. So with use, because they're synthetic and plastic in effect, rather than animal hair, with use their tips start to hook. This one hasn't yet, but that's something I will be looking out for. Okay, that leaf goes on down there under the other one. So far this is giving me the accuracy that I'm used to without anything like it not carrying enough paint. Or the other Neptune that I tried, sorry, I've just splashed paint all over the place. The other Neptune that I tried I didn't like because it was a rigger, it was too long. But this one's going well. Okay, so I've paled the paint a little bit. Still going on nicely, yep. Doing its job. And on this side. Again, this is just a tint of the main colour. Okay, so far so good, people. Yeah, it's building up colour nicely. It's holding its point. It's holding plenty of paint, so I don't have to revisit the palette all the time. That little blob there has nothing to do with the paintbrush, it has to do with the paper, unfortunately. Okay, there we go. Sharpen that edge up. That's not ideal, but again, that's me, not the paintbrush. Okay, and then a little bit here. Yep. You know what? I like this one. So I'll have to paint with it a little longer before I can pass a total conclusion. But for now, I would say that the Princeton Neptune round, it's a number 2, because they didn't have a number 1, is a brush I'm enjoying working with. So far, nothing to complain about. Paintbrush number 2, the Jackson Series 777 Quill. And the size that I was recommended to get by somebody who knows about the way I paint and knows that I like to go for a size 1 generally. They said this one would have the right sort of tip. It's nothing like any brush I've ever painted with. So I am slightly anxious about it. If I zoom in, just look at that. Yeah, that's very different. Anyway, I'm going to give it a go because it's important to be fair. So there we go. Take off its lid. It's all held together right now. So as I did before, I'm going to mix up some colours with this one. Oh my goodness. It's got such a big well. It's so thirsty. It's sucked up my entire colour mix. It's all in the brush. The point looks all right, but yeah, this is going to take some getting used to. Let's see how I manage. Okay. So here we go with the Jackson Series 777 10/0 Quill. Oh my goodness. Ugh. Okay, I'm already seeing a blunt tip. Do you see that? A blunt tip to the paintbrush, so I'm not sure that this is going to be a favourite. Okay, it's got something of a tip, I guess. It's a bit, feels a lot blunter than the Neptune. Ah, and you see I go back to get more paint, but it's sucked up all my paint. There's no more paint to get. Oh, it's feeling a bit, it's not feeling brilliant to me. I'm trying to go in for my crisp edges, and they're not really giving me what I need. I can do these lines, but it's feeling clunky, I'm not going to lie. And when I press down on the tip is slightly splaying. Yeah, I'm going to admit already that I am really not enjoying this. I am not enjoying this. I am out of my comfort zone. This tip is not giving me what I need. Okay. However, I am going to be fair and add a bit of water. I'm going to add a bit of water and pick up some more paint, but I can't pick up any more paint because the paintbrush has already picked up all the paint. If I delineate the outside, oh, crikey, try and delineate the outside of this leaf. That's quite nice. You see, if you're an artier person than me, then that effect of when you press, even with slightly, you get a much thicker brush mark. I can imagine that that would be a lovely thing if that was your cup of tea. Unfortunately, it's not mine. I don't need to do that, and I don't want to do that. I can certainly imagine writing calligraphy or something with it very happily. But it's not making me happy. See, I have to paint around the bottom of this water drop. I've left this one in. I think it's going to be extremely apparent that somebody was not enjoying herself when they came to this brush. You can already see that the quality of my painting has fallen off a cliff. And again, maybe it's just not the right brush for me, or maybe it's just not the right brush for the job. You know, for calligraphy or maybe for big washes, which I don't really know a lot about, maybe it's absolutely perfect. But for me, trying to do a detailed botanical illustration of a forget-me-not leaf, I'm struggling to get the paint to do. Look how little definition there is. It's all just flat. I mean, you can get the detail, the point is there, right? But it just is not behaving in a way that I like. And also the fact that every time that I mix up any more paint, it sucks all the paint from the palette. That makes me angry as well, because it means I just have to keep mixing way more paint than I need. Okay, I'm going to mix up another batch of paint. I've encountered another problem with this one, which is because it's so big and so thirsty, when you mix with it, you'll rinse out your brush, obviously, between colours, but because it's got so much on it, it's very difficult to get it clean. So there's green in there from where I picked that up, and in the yellow ochre, you can probably see it even clearer. It's very difficult to get the brush clean as you're mixing. So that's a problem for the way I paint with this brush as well. Just look, I mean, the tip on that is just, there's no tip. So I am going to be a good girl and finish this leaf. Oh, crikey. But I think we know that this is not the new synthetic perfect solution for Miss Harper. I think not. I don't like it. I don't like doing this. It's not working for me. And because there's so much water in the well, it means I can't really get rid of enough to get the point nice and pointy. And if I do what I always do and shouldn't, which is lick the paintbrush, get somewhere, but it's not ideal. Yeah. So yeah, I think we'd say with this, it's probably a lovely paintbrush for some jobs, but for me with botanical illustration, it ain't no good. I've just mixed up a bit more, and you can see that even understanding how the mixing is going isn't working for me. So that's much darker than the other bit. It's kept hold of some of the fresh paint from the sap green box rather than allowing me to mix it carefully. So yeah, that's this one done and dusted, I think. Conclusions on the Jackson Series 777 Quill. It's clearly a really good brush if you're doing big work where differentiating between tiny and thick strokes is important. I can imagine if I was a professional calligrapher or doing really big responsive life drawing, maybe this would be lovely because the point would be sharp enough to give you really good detail. The well would mean you had an awful lot of paint and you'd be able to press down and express yourself really clearly. For what I do, which is really, really uptight, this is no good at all. I don't think it's a bad brush. It's just certainly not the right brush for me doing botanical illustration. Third up, it's another synthetic. They're all synthetics. This one is the Escoda Versatil Sintetico. There you see, I'm like a Spanish person. Synthetic. It's a Spanish company made in Barcelona. It's a #1. It's worth pointing out that the Quill one that I just tested, 10/0, and also the Princeton Neptune that I really liked, they weren't #1s. They were number 10/0 and a #2 for the Princeton Neptune. Anyway, let's have a go at this Escoda Versatile and see what we think. I mean, to start with, oh, crikey. Ugh. Okay, to start with, if we look at that nib, I haven't even touched that. That's straight out of the plastic covering. That looks dubious. Let's not judge until we've tried it. Well, it hasn't got a massive well like the Jackson one has. It's, you know, it's mixing all right, but I'm worried about that tip. Already I'm worried about that tip. That doesn't look to me like all those hairs are neatly lined up into one cohesive tip. Does it to you? No, I can already see stray hairs. But again, I'm going to give it a go. Okay, so in we go onto the leaf. I don't think we need to be zoomed in that far. Let's see how we get on. So I'm going to start by... Okay, that's it's holding. It's better than I thought it might be. Okay, so just outlining the midrib to start with. I mean, it does have to be said, my choice of subject for this, I've been very lazy, because although obviously they do have veins, the leaf veins of the forget-me-not are very unobtrusive, so it means doing these tests is much easier. Okay, so I don't know if you can tell from the film, but what seems to be happening is I am getting my point, but I'm getting my point not from a cohesive, that's not even a word, not even from a cohesive bunch of fibres all working together, or hairs all working together, but I'm getting it because it's literally just the hair on the very tip that's doing the trick for us. I don't know, I thought it would be a lot worse than it is. Let's come on, let's be fair. I just feel, yeah, I feel that the tip, can you see with these lines, I feel that the tip itself is fine, but there's a little bit, literally 0.5 millimetre up from the tip, up the brush, where everything becomes a bit ragged and therefore everything becomes a bit blunt, and that point is not held in the way that I need it to be held, which is why we had those little white marks just there. Okay, right, there we go. And then that little dewdrop. Little dewdrop. Sounds so romantic, doesn't it? Little dewdrop. If you actually translate that into the reality of it, it means that having had a few lovely spring days, it's now pouring with rain again, which is monumentally depressing. Okay. There we go. And all the lambs are going to be getting wet in their fields, which is such a shame. I do love springtime. I do love it. But when the weather's inclement, I do feel so sorry for, you know, the blossom being beaten up in the wind and the sheep cowering by the hedges under the blackthorn and the you know, the wild pear, and yeah. But the blackbirds sing through it all. It's very nice. In fact, it's one of the sounds that always reminds me of, I didn't live in Britain all my life. I lived in America for a long time. And one of the sounds that always reminds me of home, being in Britain, is the sound of a blackbird singing in the rain. I love it. Okay. Yeah, this is okay. Would I know that I wasn't using my... Would I know I wasn't using my Winsor and Newton? Yeah, I would. It's okay. Let's be honest. It's okay. What about going the other direction? Can you see? You can see what I mean, I think, about the nib. I'm going to try and zoom in. Sorry, I know that makes the camera shake. You see, there's just not... It's just a bit splayed, isn't it? Okay, let's zoom out again. Okay. And again, it's laterally compressed. I think we had that problem with another of the brushes I tested, where it just sort of felt like it had been flattened, like a flea, flattened on one side. I mean, if somebody said this is the only paintbrush you can ever use again, I probably would be like, okay, that's fine, but my heart wouldn't sing. Whereas I think with the Jackson Quill one, which is so different to what I'm used to, I think that would have made me weep. But this is right. I guess it's like some of the other brushes I've tested. I don't feel secure with it, yeah? I don't feel that the tip is doing exactly what I want it to do. I'm having to concentrate quite hard. Oh, yuck. I'm having to concentrate quite hard on the lines that I'm using, the lines that I'm making. And when you're painting, especially if you're doing a larger piece or, you know, lots back to back, you can't be doing that. You can't be being super aware of what's going on all the time and thinking about every single brush stroke. You just have to be able to go with it. So yeah, no, I'm not. It's just rough. The tip is too rough. It's not a smooth enough rough tip. I mean, maybe other ones in the series have got better tips, but this one for me is woohoo, yahavi. It's no good. Yeah, I can make it work, but I'm not having fun. Okay, let's just get that leaf done and move on to the next brush. Okay, what about with lighter tints? Again, look, I mean, even as I'm using it, can you see it's deteriorating? The quality of that nib is getting less and less convincingly good. I ought to go around a brush making factory, shouldn't I? Because I'm sure if you were a brush maker looking at this, you'd be screaming at me saying, have you got any idea how hard it is to make a brush that holds paint and holds its tip? You know nothing. I'm sure that they'd be enraged by how quickly I dismiss their efforts. But yeah, I mean, for me, no, this one's not a goer. Don't like it. I don't like it. I don't want to play with it anymore. Yeah. So yeah, it's a no for the Escoda Versatile, because that nib is rough. This is the fourth of the synthetic brushes I'm trying today. This one's a Vinci Colinio. I did try another Vinci last time. If I remember rightly, it made me feel that it wasn't particularly trustworthy. I felt like it wasn't going to hold. So this one's been suggested by another viewer. Hopefully this one will be a bit better. Vinci Collinio, it's number 1. let's see how we get on with this one. So far so good. That tip looks really nice. Having just said how nice the tip looks, I've already seen 2 stray hairs. Oh, and you know how mean I am about stray hairs. Right. Oh, gosh, it's triangular. It's also, oh, it's the handle. I don't know if you can see if I rotate it. You see it's got a slight bump on it. In cross-section, it would be triangular with rounded corners. Right. So mixing paint. Oh, that's all right. Nothing to write home about there. Looks fine. Let's try it on the page. Let's make sure that those loose bristles don't create. Oh my goodness. Okay, that is not a tip. Look at that. It's like a square tip. That's not a tip. Oh no, 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 no. It's another one I'm not gonna like using. Oh, I don't like it when they're not what I like. Okay. Give it a go, Lizzie. Be fair. Okay, already that is not the sharp, crisp line that I'm used to or want. It's totally laterally compressed, so it's flat. It's totally flat. I don't know if you can see that. I think you probably can actually. Move that up slightly. Okay, so each mark is quite small, so that's all right. That's not too bad. And if I'm very careful as I pull the brush out from the mixing, oh yuck, from the mixing palette, if I hold it at the right angle and make sure that I use the edge of the flattened point. Can you see? I'm painting with it's like I'm painting with a rectangular nib, and I'm just using one corner of the rectangles to get the point that I need. Again, perhaps that's a thing. Perhaps that's something that more experienced artists are used to. I'm not used to doing that. And it's holding the paint well. It's, you know, it's... And painting as I am with that corner effect, I can get quite crisp lines, so it's not a total disaster. But I know if I rotate it the wrong angle, I'll be lost. Yeah, and getting right into those sharp little bits is tricky. It's actually weirdly, I mean, the way it looked really was a big turn off, because it looks slightly splayed and also very, very square. But it's actually painting better than I thought it would. I certainly don't like it as much as I did the Neptune, but it's competing for second best. It's, you know, it's slightly, the nib isn't perfect, and the nib is definitely square, but it's holding its point in a way that the last one didn't. Yeah, so if I get the angle right, if I make sure I'm painting on the edge, it's all right. I've been painting with this brush for a couple more minutes now, and things are going from bad to worse, so now it's becoming really scratchy as well, so I've had trouble with the odd hair coming loose, and it's just really not pleasant. I'm not finding it easy to use at all. Yeah, what a shame. I could even, a minute ago, I could even hear it scratching. I could hear the bristles scratching on the page, so that wasn't great news. Yeah, no, that nib is not good enough for me. I'm also finding on working into the lights, where I like to just use water to bring a paler tint over the highlights, it's not got the consistency. It's like I can't put the brakes on. at the edge of the, somehow I can't make that gradation stop where I normally would be able to without even thinking. I've got to think really carefully, and it's just swallowing things up because it's going not quite where I need it to. So yeah, I mean, I think you can tell by the quality of that leaf. It's not been a happy enterprise. Okay, here I'm going to put a blob of colour with each brush. Make a tint of it and do a nice thin line. So I'll do a nice thin line. This is the first one that we're doing. So this is the Neptune round by Princeton. Thick line, thin line, very thin line. I think you can see that. So if I write Princeton Neptune next to it. Princeton Neptune round. So this one's all right. I quite like it. It's one of the best that I've tried. I'm still not entirely convinced. Let me do just down below, let me do a tint. So there's that colour again. But then if I dilute it out, there you go. Yeah, that's quite nice. So it does, it takes tints as well. It's all right. Quite like the Princeton Neptune round. It's number one. Second one was the second one there? Jackson, I think it was. Second one is the Jackson Quill. So again, this probably doing what I'm about to do now is perfect for this brush. So again, a big blob of colour up at the top. And twist it to try and get a decent line. Thin and thick and thin. It's not nearly as controlled. I think you can see that. And I'm not going to be able to write with it. Let's see what I can do. I mean, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? Jackson Quill. I do have a hair on the end of it, so I am not. Jackson Quill, then it was 0. And it's series S777. And again, down at the bottom, let's do a blob of colour and wash. And again, I would imagine this is where this brush comes into its own. Look, it brings so much water to it. Yeah, so that's, I mean, that's what this brush is clearly brilliant for, is for big washes. So that's our Jackson Quill. Next one up is the Escoda. So let's do blue for the Escoda. Here we are. That's a lovely colour, isn't it? It's called Intense Blue. It's one of my favourites. And a nice thin line. So this is the one, do you remember, with a very flattened nib that you had to paint. No, maybe it's not. I can't remember. I can't tell them apart anymore. So this one, oh yeah, it was just slightly unpredictable. It can do a nice thin line, but I didn't enjoy it, the Escoda. It was, yeah, that's right. There you go. You can tell as I write with it. It's splaying. Escoda Versatile. Whoa. Versatile. Number 1. And again, let's do a nice bit of wash. Add that water. Yeah, it's fine. And finally, the Da Vinci, which I really don't think I got on with either. Okay. Oops, sorry. And if we, whoops, and if we try and do a thin line with the Da Vinci. Yeah, it's okay, but it's not perfect. Far from it. Right, so then if we write the name down, yeah, this is the one that where the nib felt really square. Yeah, you can see. So this is Da Vinci Colinio. And that's the number 1 as well. And again. Add some water. Yeah, it's fine for that. So there we go. Those are our 4 brushes. So there we have it, our 4 tested brushes. And out of these, the Princeton Neptune round is definitely my favourite. Jackson Quill, good brush, but just not relevant for what I'm doing. Escoda Versatile, scratchy, didn't really enjoy it. Doesn't feel safe. The tip was splayed. And the Da Vinci Collinio had a squarish nib. And in order to get a point and edge, you had to paint on the very edge of it. So that didn't work for me. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch my film comparing synthetic brushes. Hopefully you've enjoyed it to a certain extent and learnt a bit. There's certainly some contenders there. So out of the 4 I tested, definitely the one that I have the highest hopes for is this one, the Princeton Neptune. It will go alongside the Rosemary and Company Spotters red dot, which is my current favourite alternative. I've got another batch that I'm going to be testing very soon, and I've also got 2 more brushes on order, and by that point I think we will all be synthetic brushed out, don't you? There will be accompanying blogs to go with this film as well, so I'll put the links in the information below. Please feel free to visit my website and read the blogs, and also browse original artwork for sale. You know, there's lots of stuff up there, galleries of my work and stuff. www.lizzieharper.co.uk. Oh, and like and subscribe. I know I have to say that. And thanks again. Thanks for watching, and thanks for going on this journey looking for an alternative to my beloved Sable Series 7 brushes with me. I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.